I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. All right, welcome back again. I Mix What I Like Live. Again, I'm Jared Ball. Happy to be your host. I mixwhatilike.org for more, of course, for much more now. With the expansion, blackpowermedia.org for all that's going on with this channel and more. Make sure you are all signed up there. Please do like and subscribe and join the channel. Obviously, there's a lot going on and we're expanding. And as I notice other hosts on these channels point out, when you look at the numbers, we see that a lot more people, almost twice as many watch live as actually hit the like button. And I think we're at like 2/3 are subscribed, but then we still need that many more to actually join the channel. So there's all these different levels of support that we encourage. At least hit the like button and encourage other people to join and so on. So we already talked with Dhoruba bin Wahad again. And we're looking for him to join this next conversation as well. Please, if you are just joining this live or seeing this replay, make sure you go back and catch our conversation with Dhoruba bin Wahad, just about 2 hours related to Judas and the Black Messiah and the new breaking news over the weekend of the revelations around the undercover agent Raymond Wood's deathbed confession involving setting up both Malcolm and members of the Panther 21 later on. So please check that out. It was a great conversation, and please share it, like it, and all of that good stuff. Later today at 8 o'clock Eastern time, please come back once again, where we're having a really full and robust roundtable with contributors to Alive, Reinvention, Correcting Manning Marable's Malcolm X on this yet another anniversary of Malcolm's assassination in 1965. And given that so many of those issues and related issues are still prevalent and persistent, it's a great kind of reunion that we're having tonight at 8 o'clock. Also, by the way, associated with those revelations, so to speak, of Raymond Wood, is the fact that, as he said in his confession letter, he called out Thomas Johnson, one of the accused killers of Malcolm X, specifically, and his family for having suffered the false accusations and the misleading machinations of Wood and his co-agents. One of Johnson's attorneys, at least for a time, is one of our colleagues and comrades with Black Power Media, Kamal Franklin, co-host of Renegade Culture, who will be joining us also as a contributor to Alive, Reinvention, Correcting Manning Marable's Malcolm X later tonight, and who I will certainly ask to elaborate a little bit on his views of those revelations. So a lot more coming, so please stick around beyond just this conversation and come back later on for that as well. Similarly, by the way, I should have mentioned this in the last one. If you haven't caught it already, see the latest episode of The Last Dope Intellectual with Dr. Sharice Burden-Stelly, because she actually goes into, she and Dhoruba are on the same page in the DAT course as it relates to the discourse that I'm in around Judas and the Black Messiah, and her views on not humanizing and valorizing snitches and agents is really well laid out in that episode. So anyway, go check it out, because she expands on some of the histories of snitching beyond just William O'Neill, and why she has such a painful and sort of visceral negative reaction to wanting to see this film. Anyway, so check that out. Black Power Media, it's already up. The Last Dope Intellectual, episode 3. Now, turning to our next conversation about community control of the police, my favorite brother and longtime comrades in Pan-African community action. Max Rameau is a Haitian-born political theorist, strategist, and author, and an organizer with Pan-African Community Action in Washington, D.C. And our dear brother, Netfa Freeman, among many other things, is an organizer in Pan-African Community Action, or PACA, is on the coordinating committee of the Black Alliance for Peace, and is co-producer host of the radio show that is not for the politically faint of heart, that is Voices with Vision, airs on Tuesday mornings on WPFW 89.3 in Washington, D.C. Fellas, good morning. Welcome to the program. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Man, good morning. Thank you. And you doing it this morning, huh?
Yeah.
Well, you know how it is, man. You know, so I keep telling people, you know, I always appreciate that people think that I can just put up the bat signal and get Daruba whenever I want. But that's, as you all know, how that's not how it works. Thankfully, Daruba and his comrades find value in our platform. So, you know, he reached out. They reached out and were like, you know, Jared, make it happen. You know, we need to make this happen. So obviously, I mean, that's how it always happens. I'm just like, I find you know, we match up a schedule. You know, I was announcing yesterday, we were about to go live yesterday. I was like, I'll click live right now. We go live right now if you want, if it's convenient. The point is, whenever Daruba, you know, wants to go, we go. And if he shows up with the link I sent him to this conversation, as he suggested he might, we might hear from him some more.
Yeah, you can't say no, right?
No, hell no. Why would I say no? What the hell is the point of having a platform if you're going to say no to him? I mean, you know, you might as well shut it down. I mean, seriously, like seriously.
Well, will you allow us to do a shameless plug and say that we're gonna? Daruba confirmed to be part of our Wednesday Asana Shakur study group, talking about the same thing, the film and everything, along with Rosa Clemente. So.
Yeah, that's already up. I got it queued up. We were definitely going to get to it, and we'll come back to that because, you know, as selfish as you know as I can be, Daruba needs to be wherever he can get. So I want, you know, wherever he is, I want to let people know he will be beyond even, you know, obviously just this platform. But so listen, I'm trying to catch up to this new statement you all put out on community control of the police. I honestly didn't realize to what extent there apparently is this controversy you all felt you needed to somewhat clear up in terms of how it relates to defund the police and other efforts. So you know, I don't know who would like to go first. Max, maybe we can start with you, but I'll just pick one, flip a coin. But what is, I'll pull it up here, but what is it that you all are trying to convey in this latest statement from a Pan-African community action on the issue of community control of the police, and this new piece here, the radical practicality of community control of the police, which we have linked in the description to this video if you haven't read it already. But yeah. Please, Max, if you would get us started, what are we trying to do here?
So PACA, Pan-African Community Action, was started in November 2015 in response to the death of, or the killing of, more accurately, of Alonzo Smith in Washington, D.C. by special police, which is not a police. They are police, but they're not employed by the state. And as we engage in conversation, as we engage in discussion, as we engage in dialectics, and then started doing some research, we came to the demand of community control over police. And then we developed all kinds of theory around it, et cetera. So this was back in 2015, really in between 2015 and the early parts of 2016. And we've been putting out theory around it. We've been talking about it in Washington, D.C. We have had a number of political education sessions, community forums, one-on-one discussions, and written pieces about it, and engaged in discussion and debate around the subject since then. Then, of course, we've had all kinds of things happen since then. Urban rebellions have popped off. Of course, this came on the heels of the Mike Brown urban rebellion and the Gray rebellion in Baltimore. But then, of course, more recently, we've had the ones around George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. So we've had these things go on, and then a national coalition emerged that was putting out the call for community control over police. And that was spearheaded by Frank Chapman out in Chicago and the National Alliance Against Racial and Political Repression, which then PACA joined because we're excited about the idea of community control over police becoming a national call, and et cetera. So we've been doing that. And then suddenly when the George Floyd protests happened, shortly after that, we started seeing the calls for defund the police. And we have heard the calls for quite some time around abolition, but I think there's been a renewed push around that recently. And so we responded to those calls with a position paper saying that we love the fact that this demand is coming out. And when we think about the demand, this is so much better. Defund the police and, taking all their money away or a significant portion of their money away and abolishing is such a more significant demand than, for example, make all the police wear body cameras so that the state is monitoring you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we don't have no control over what they're doing with the monitoring. So we thought that was a terrible demand when it came out, and we think this is a move backward. But defund is a significant step forward. People are thinking about how do we reshape this society. And those are important moves. But we thought it was important to dig a little deeper and say, this is a much improved demand, defund is, but we need to sharpen that a little bit more. What we actually want is control over our communities, not just for them to lose their formal control over or funding for these forms. So we put out some lines like that. And even before then, but right around the time, we started getting all kinds of pieces, and there's been discussions and debates around some of the limitations or perceived limitations of community control over police. So we're responding to those. There have been 4 or 5 think pieces criticizing community control of the police. And we've had several concerns, not just responding because there's some legitimate concerns, but also responding because we felt like some of the concerns raised were intellectually dishonest, to be frank. But yeah, that's where this paper comes from, is that we are responding to both the legitimate criticisms and thoughts people have, but also trying to confront some of the things that we felt like are either misreadings, misunderstandings, or mischaracterizations of our positions.
So Netfa, let's just carry on from there. What are you all arguing for? What is being said you are arguing for? And what is the difference that you're all trying to clear up in this piece?
Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of, they're not. There's only a couple different interpretations of how to get to community control of the police. But I think what community control of the police is pretty consolidated. And community control of the police basically is our communities organized to be able to form public safety patrols, aka police, that we actually put together ourselves through participatory democracy type of process, and which means the people have to be organized, and that we would actually do also tie that to campaigns that would statutorily take away the police, the current police jurisdiction in our community. So, for example, in PACA, we're working in Washington, D.C. and calling for a ballot initiative that we would put on the ballot community control of the police, where different wards or districts would have the ability to vote out, kick out the police, and then vote for community control of police, in which we were organized through people's assemblies, through community councils, and through a civilian police control board that would manage the priorities and the priorities, duties, and the policies of what we put together as a police. And so we're really talking about reimagining the police. And that the other part of your question was what is being said that we're calling for. And this is very well, you gonna say something?
Well, I was just gonna say, yeah, I was also asking, like, what is being said about you that you're responding to the critics? Like, what are the critics saying about you, your position that you're responding to here? But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
And no, it's okay. And then, some of the pieces mention PACA in particular, and we're not really dealing with the fact that they're mentioning us, but it does concern us that if any mischaracterizations or misunderstandings of our position are put out there. So we do have that concern. But then what they're saying is, and it's a few different analysis, I guess, and in some ways, some of them, like Max said, are critical thinking on the part of what the implications of it, and some seemingly to just being dishonest intellectualism, and some. So one is that we're calling for, this is the misnomer, is that we're calling for overseeing the police, the extension of the state that is the police, that we're calling for an overseeing of that, and that we want to manage, basically, they don't say this, but I guess they do. Maybe some of the pieces say we're trying to manage our oppression and the repression of the police. And then some is that, then others tie it to community review boards and and civilian review boards and community policing, which we have always made a clear distinction between. Community policing being the collaboration with the state apparatus of the police, where they get to come in and collaborate with the community, and which basically is enforcing or making us an accomplice to mass incarceration, making the people in the community working with the police and their PR campaigns. And then the other community policing, community review boards, is really a toothless thing where communities form committees, or where people from the community are selected by some other process, and oversee the conduct of the police, and judge and make recommendations, non-binding recommendations after the fact that they've done something. That's distinction from what we're completely not what we're calling for. That we've made painstaking effort to make a distinction between this and what we're doing ever since we formed, first papers when we formed PACA, and that what we're calling for is like what I just described, a participatory democratic process that has us taking control over public safety. And then the last part of your question was, I can't remember.
Well, I was just saying, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
But then, and Max, maybe you can help me remember some of the other accusations there. One, and some of the other things is they're not really, it's more than what we're calling for, but what they're saying of the dilemmas between it. And they recount justifiably so, or understandably so, or legitimately so, all the difficulties that the state and the powers that be would level against such a, the community having any kind of say and those kind of things, which are legitimate, we feel, but at the same time, they also apply to anyone who's talking about defunding police to zero. And so it's not really a criticism of us. It's just really, it's not really a valid critique of our position, but it's really just talking about the challenges of dealing with white supremacy, capitalism, and patriarchy, and the extension, that system, and the fact that they use and have to have police to enforce that. In fact, we say that as long as that this is the analysis, and as long as that there is a class system based on these things, white supremacy, capitalism, patriarchy, that system, or any kind of class-based system, it requires some form of police. And the only question for us is trying to work toward a situation where, the class that's in charge is changed.
Max, did you want to add to any of that, or?
No, I think that's a good broad overview, although there's some we may want to get deeper on as we continue this conversation.
Well, yeah, I definitely, the very next question that just comes to mind off of that to you both is, why do you think, to the extent that some of these arguments are made, some of which you feel are disingenuous, why do you think that people have a problem with the positions you're taking? And why do you think that there's a level of disingenuousness?
So there are some of the critiques, as we've said, that are legitimate and that are intellectually honest and that come from a real place. So, for example, there's a lot of folks who are concerned about, who think that our proposal calls for taking over the existing police department. And people are like, I don't want to control the existing police department. I don't want to have anything to do with them. We want to actually get away from them. And we don't think that they can be legitimate. We don't think they can be all these things. So, and we agree with that. And we understand the visceral reaction. In fact, we had some of those early discussions we had were around that point, like the idea of the police, controlling the police is a little bit strange feeling. And I think this is where human beings are kind of trapped by their own perception. So we're here on the earth, look up in the sky, we see the sun going across. So it's easy to think just visually that the sun is rotating around the earth rather than the other way around, right? And so if we've grown up in this society and we think about police in a particular way, then we think that is the police, period. They're always going to be racist. They're always going to be sexist. They're always going to be classist. And that's the only way that they can be. So what we're trying to do then is to think a little bit broader than that. I think those are legitimate concerns. We're trying to be a little broader than that and say, well, what is the fundamental function of police or the equivalent of police in any society? And we assert that the fundamental function of police is to enforce the will and the mores of the ruling class. So we don't want to then fight the police. If that's true, that their fundamental job is to enforce the will of the ruling class, then you can never stop police brutality by talking about or going after the police. You can only stop police brutality by changing who the ruling class is. That's the only way to do it. Because if the police the police are paying you to beat somebody and you want to keep your job, you're going to beat somebody or they're going to kick you off the force and hire someone else, which is also the other reason why there's no such thing as a good cop, because their job description in a real way prevents them from being so good in the way that we might commonly describe good. So we need to reimagine that portion, and we need to think about what does it mean for us to be in control. And I think that's the big part. In terms of why people are making these, I think this is sometimes this is a challenging position to hold, that we should have power. I think the left or leftish forces in the United States don't necessarily understand power. I think it has been driven out of the political discussion here, and we think about influence. How do we influence those who are in power? How do we influence the government? And we don't think often enough about, okay, how do we take control of our community so we have no one to influence? We are the ones making the decisions. And I think that discussion exists in a lot of societies. It does not exist in a real fundamental way in the United States. And that part makes it, but then that means then that some of the discussions that we're having around things like community control, then when people have other positions, they want to hold on to their position. And sometimes they want to hold on to their positions because there's funding involved through a 501c3 organization. I'm not saying this is universally so, where everyone who critiques community control over police is doing it because of money, but there are some instances like that. We've seen that in other campaigns. I think that's one thing. I think the other thing is just holding on to a political position that one has had for a long time, and it's difficult to let go of that position. And then there's others of it is just political backwardness that then manifests itself in these debates about political positions that are not for the politically faint of heart.
Nefa, you wanted to add something?
Well, I think he already covered when I did that little he said what I was. So, but I mean, I can still say I think that sometimes, because and I like that analogy that Max used with the sun thing. I think a lot of this movement around police has really done a lot to focus so much on the conduct of police and policing itself, without looking at it as being an extension of the state, and the state being a tool and function to facilitate the the system that we live in. And so a lot of it is behavior, holding police accountable, etc. Like Daruba was talking about, and not looking at the fact that we have to go deeper. And so it's easy to say, well, defund, and also the fact that police budgets, and nobody can argue that they just are crazy, they're out of control in terms of what police are being funded, how much the departments are being defunded, and then the fact, the disparity between that and the neglect of people in terms of social services and all that kind of stuff. So it's an easy look if you're not looking at that broader system, and so in some ways it makes some sense. But yeah.
Can I just hearing Nefa reminded me of one of what I feel is an intellectually dishonest argument, if I can, real quick. So
sure.
So we're talking about building a new institution that will be controlled by people who live in small communities. So Washington, D.C., for example, we would probably split up into 8 districts, just like there are wards or council districts, just like there are wards or districts. We'd split it up, and then we would have each ward or district vote and say, either I want to keep the police department that we got, or we want our own department that we control. And then communities would control those departments. So some critics have said, well, look, if we give communities control over these departments, we've got 2 problems. One is that people don't know how to run these departments. So we're going to have unqualified people running these things, which is a whole other argument. But then the second one is we have in our community some backwards elements, and those backwards elements could then create a repressive police force, which is just as repressive or repressive in a particular way. Which we hear that as an argument. But then those same forces who are putting out that critique are also saying that we should defund and there should be no police at all, and that communities should self-organize for self-defense. Well, if it is true that we have backwards elements in the community and we don't want them then having a formal structure that then is accountable to everyone, then why would we want the same forces having an informal structure that would then, and that changes from one block to the next, not just one district to the next, but one block to the next? And then what rules are they operating under? So this idea that people somehow cannot organize themselves to bring safety to our communities in an organized way with a budget and with actual employees, think that people can spontaneously, with no budget, no one getting paid, can spontaneously provide community safety in a non-racist, non-sexist, non-classist way. I think that is intellectually dishonest, not because the criticism itself is not true, but because the criticism itself also applies to the position of defund and abolish, but probably more so because there would be no formal structure that follows it. So I think that is an intellectually dishonest argument, and we haven't heard a direct response back when we raise that counter.
And because some of the criticism also stemmed from one of the specific pieces was citing the fact, recognizing that we are saying that the only real way to have any type of legitimate, genuine abolishing or defunding is to have control first. And so they're saying, well, they put that out there and they acknowledge that's our position. And then they go on to attack that position, saying that it's unclear how that would lead to, be citing some of the things that Max just presented. But, and I think that was, but I wanted to just go, well, maybe you go ahead. You had a question.
No, go ahead, because I mean, really, I just wanted to because because in your piece you say you make it clear. You're saying we're not contradicting calls to either defund or abolish police. We're saying either presupposes a need for communities to be in control of the police.
Right. Yeah, I think that is our fundamental point here.
Be in control of ourselves. Being self-controlled, have self-determination, being organized. Because if you put it the way you did, then it leaves it open to the way, what they're saying.
What I think the money line is that even abolition or defunding, either one, presupposes control.
Right.
We can't get them to stop shooting us in the back. How are we going to get them to defund an entire department? The only way we can defund it is if we control it and we say we're going to take the money away from it. So even if what you want is defund, or if what you want is abolition, the only way you can achieve those things is if you are in control of that entity. And then once you're in control of the entity, then you can defund it because you're in control of the budget, or you can abolish it because you're in control of the entity itself. So even if you want to go to defund, or even if you want to go to abolish, even those steps must come through control first as a matter of sequence.
Right. And actually why we opt for the ballot initiative strategy, one of the reasons why we opt for the ballot initiative strategy, one, it's a process that requires us to be organizing in the community. It requires us to be out there with the people and building it, just a campaign to do it. But at the same time, it is not depend on policymakers to implement this thing or enact this thing, which, that's why we say it can, it can lead to that. And we were accused of not, I think, not, and in all fairness, maybe because we haven't made that part clear, and we haven't, emphasized we've made the ballot initiative part clear always, but emphasize the community organizing, participatory democracy part. But the fact that, so it was kind of said that we were depending on the policymakers to enact this community control.
Yeah, because I was going to say, you have as a pull quote, this criticism. So let me get this straight. You're telling me I can vote out the police,
right?
And that's not exactly what you're saying, or is it?
I think it is what we're saying. I think we're saying we could have the greatest voter turnout in Black community history if we go to people and say, register to vote, and you can vote out the police and replace it with our own community force. And I think that is what we're saying. And I think that's going to encourage.
It's what you're advocating be developed, but I'm saying you're not. But if I'm reading correct, you're not saying that process is in place yet.
No, not yet. No, that's what we would. Right, that's what we're moving towards. Yeah, but we think when we engage in that process, that's going to be the conversation in door to door. When we go door knocking, when we do community organizing, instead of saying turn out the vote and please vote for Joe Biden, we're going to turn out the vote and you can say vote for yourself, vote to empower yourself. You can on the ballot is going to be a question of saying, do you want to keep this police department, or do you want to dump it? And we could dump it and start something that is responsive to our own communities where we are actually in charge.
I mean, this is what you're saying. The movement you're trying to build would end up advocating or developing. There isn't currently a ballot initiative
No,
that people can vote for.
Not now, but there were ballot initiatives in 1967 and 68 in Berkeley, California, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I think there was one in Oregon around community control of the police, all sponsored by the Black Panther Party, where they put this question to the ballot. And so that is what we're trying to get rolling again. We want to get that. We want to get that question on the ballot, but we don't want it to be so that we take over the existing police department. We want to vote out the existing police department and replace it with a community a safety department.
Right, and we have to build to that. We don't want to build the ballot prematurely, but we don't have enough, because I mean, that was one of the things that we had to put in the article, because somebody was brought up this issue of the Black Panther Party losing the ballot initiative back in the 60s, and that why would we want to do that kind of thing? And we were saying, well, that's why we would want to do it is because that was the issue of only losing by votes. It wasn't, anything it's a kind of an easy fix. We just win more votes, in this one. And so that's the thing. So it's a two-pronged thing. It's the community organizing. And then there's this. There's the community organizing, and then the statutory strategy of the ballot initiative, making it, but then there's also this. Say if we're really doing what we're saying our strategy has, and I'm not sure about how much the Black Panther Party back in those days included it, but I'm sure it did have something in organizing the people around these different things. If we win the ballot initiative, we still will have won a level of organization that we don't have right now if we're doing the work properly. And right now, all of this other stuff, if we're doing right now, unfortunately, a lot of our movement is seeing mobilization after mobilization, a big, heavy emphasis on mobilization with some, and I'm trying not to say this in a disparaging way, with maybe some hope that the powers that be will just, make some decisions and give us some sort of redress, but to the complete neglect of organizing, using the mobilizations as a means and a strategy to better organize our people on the mass level. And one of the things that Ruben said earlier when you were talking about, because this is what we're talking about, he talked about the power that we have on the local communities most. He said, we have that power. We can do things like referendums and ballot initiatives, even running people for office on that way. But none of that makes any sense if we're not organized. Even running people on the ballot, if those people aren't candidates that come out of the fortified, organized movements of the working class, Black and brown and red community, then it doesn't mean anything. If they're just people who come up there with their own interpretation of what their vocation is and want to represent us. Nah, but if they're people that are steeled within our organizing, a participatory process, not representative democracy, which we have here, you just abdicate what needs to be done for us to some representative that claims to have our interests, but a process in which, anyway. Yeah.
I mean, anyway, the whole thing about the influencing power thing is funny. I mean, Biden didn't he just tell the governors this past week that there won't even be a $15 minimum wage thing, that's not even going to happen? So I mean, like the most minimal things, they're not even doing. So I don't see where something as big as whatever people are hoping will happen with the police is going to come from that, from that end of the political spectrum, right. At least.
Right. There's a question in the chat that
no, I don't see them all. I don't catch them all. So if you see one you want to respond to,
Miss J. Free is what is the real possibility of this? If we understand the function of the police in a fascist society, do we think the state will submit any real authority without countering with other measures? No, we don't expect that, but the only alternative is to do nothing. Well, that's what I see.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that is a legitimate question. And just to be clear about what we're doing two things here when we're talking about community control over police. One is we are organizing our communities to be responsible for our own safety, for our own improvements, for our own standard of living, and that's really what we're doing. Whether we win the ballot initiative or not is in some ways, I don't want to take this too far here, but in some ways is not the most important. It really is not the most important thing. In some ways, I don't want to say it's irrelevant, but it really is not the most important thing. We must organize our communities to think about how do we do these things for ourselves rather than how do we demand that those who have been oppressing us also help us. So I think that is the real function of what we're doing here. And then if this goes to the ballot, then we can either then get control over a significant chunk of money that we can then use the way that we need to use in order to improve our communities. So I think that is one outcome. Or we don't get that chunk of money, but we've organized our community so that we now are in a position where we can take this to the next level. So that's one. With that said, I think we're also going to face, if we win, we will face significant pushback from the state and significant attempts to be undermined from the state. But if we do this the right way, in a way that organizes the community as the first and foremost proposition, then people will fight for that. So there's a bunch of things in this society that Black people do have won as a political gain, but don't feel particularly connected to. So as a result, there's all kinds of stuff you can do to Black people, and we don't, as a general rule, do a big fight back. But you tell you one thing you cannot do in this society: you cannot tell a Black person to go sit in the back of the bus, because that is something that we took on collectively, and it is in our collective, not just imagination, but our collective consciousness that we fought for this, and this is something we want. So if we do the same thing around this particular campaign idea that we take control over this element, this aspect, this institution in society, then we will have a feeling that this is ours and it's belong, and we'll be willing to fight for it in a way that we're not willing to fight for some of these other things that, you know, were won, but were won in backroom deals and that did not have a mass character to their campaign. So that's one, is that the first and foremost, what we're doing is organizing our community, not actually taking over this institution, even though we are trying to take over this institution. The second thing, however, is that we're trying to do is to bring out the exact point that the question raises, which is that even if we go through a process, a democratic process, in order to democratize a segment of society, all in a real sense, all we're saying is that, look, you have these different areas of society. The school has a school board. The local government has a city council, or, you know, county council, or whatever it is. All these different places are, these different segments of society are democratized in some way. Many cities have the library system, has an elected board to it that helps make decisions about it. All these, the least democratic part of this society is the part where people get to carry guns and shoot you and detain you and deprive you of your freedom. There's no democratic part. Some places you can elect the sheriff, but you can't make the decisions democratically, make the decisions about where these kind of how the department is actually run, and what kind of things, what kind of crimes they should actually be focused on. So we want to democratize this part. I think a real possibility is that we win an election somewhere, and then after we win an election, the mayor holds a press conference and says, look, I know we've been talking about democracy and we all say United States of America, but we cannot actually give this kind of power to Black people. We're not giving you no guns. So we are nullifying this result. And we think that will also have a revealing value to it. It will open people's eyes. It will be a victory for us. And it'll be a victory in a different type of way, for sure. A different type of way. I don't want to say it won't be some kind of law, but in a real way, the idea that there's going to be significant pushback from the state, significant undermining, is baked into the plan. It is baked into the plan. And if this is what we need to expose the people that we're not actually living in a democracy, then this is what we need to do.
By the way, that was exactly how I saw, as I watched on the sideline, the whole argument from a few months ago over the whole force the vote for Medicare for all thing. That it wasn't necessarily with the expectation that they would do it, but you just want to see people not do it while they tell you that's why they were elected to do it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just want to see it happen. Like, go ahead and tell me again why you're not going to force it. Go ahead and tell me again.
Yeah.
Yo, same thing. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You said you're gonna replace Nancy Pelosi, and now you hugging her? What? What?
Man, yeah.
I think it's the same thing with a bunch of Biden pronouncements right now about the minimum wage, about how, and he's asked about the student debt, and he said, I'm not doing that.
Yep.
I'm not doing that. And that 2,000 went to 1,400.
Message in Georgia saying, the only thing keeping you from a $2,000 check tomorrow is you electing these two senators, and then I'm not sending you no $2,000 check. Yeah, so let's expose it and let's talk about it openly. So that this is baked into the plan. We do think that's a very real thing. The real question now, though, for us is that right now we don't have any power and any prospects to getting to power. At least this way, we bring forth that contradiction. At a minimum, we could possibly reach that wall, but we could, at a minimum, bring forth this contradiction.
That has to be why you've gotten some resistance, even from circles that are supposed to be supportive of the idea that people see that the end game might result in an exposure of contradictions that they don't want to be involved in, and they're like, hold up now, let's go back to that.
I was just saying that to Max. People say, hair on the, I don't know about this.
Yeah, I don't know about this. They start looking at them funding sheets, and I
don't want to go too far on this thing. However, I am one of the things I'm most interested in seeing is if and when we get this on the ballot somewhere, is seeing the number of hardcore organizations, or now the organization we think of as hardcore, who turn around and say, we oppose giving Black people control over their own forces. We oppose giving them control over this $50 million budget here, which will be their portion of the police budget. We oppose that. Well, that's something we're looking to see.
Right.
So we've looked at it. So we've at least somewhat covered the basics of this very well written and substantive statement. But there are but you also have sort of I don't know, a summarized platform version of this, so that going forward, those within PACA, those who want to support this initiative, from outside the organization, can say, when they go to their friends and their dinner parties or their virtual whatever's, they can say, this is what we want, and this is why we want community control of the police. It means this, it means that, it means this. So go to your whoever and get that on whatever, and let's vote for that. Is that part of this somewhere?
Yeah, we've got a couple things on the PACA website, which is pacapower.org, pacapower.org. We have a section called Position Papers, and under the position papers, we have a position paper called Community Control Over Police. And that is a brief. If you print it out, with a PDF version of it, if you print it out, it's 4 pages. So it's a very brief version. It doesn't explain everything. We can't do that in 4 pages, but it does answer some of those questions. The other thing is that on the other one we have, if you scroll down a little bit on the PACA website, you'll see another one called Community Control of Police Frequently Asked Questions. And that's where we try to tackle some of the questions that we get a little more frequently. There it is right there, Community Control of Police FAQ, and there we answer some of the basic questions about community control over police and what it means and what it is that we get more frequently. So that's the second one. The third one then is not out yet, but NEPA, myself, and M. Adams, an incredible organizer out of Madison, Wisconsin, we are finishing up a book called Community Control Over Police, where we will have in great detail each one of these elements, both the background theory and then the real practical, this is how it works on a step-by-step. Here's a campaign arc that we can use to win. Here's what we do after we win and after we lose, which is actually not that different, by the way, because our real objective, again, is to organize communities. So whether we win or we lose almost becomes a speed bump or a afterthought. The real thing that we're concerned about is organizing our communities to think about power and think about how we can implement power ourselves. And if we get a big budget for that, then great. If we don't get a big budget for that, then we continue to do it the way that we had thought about doing it in the first place.
Mm-hmm. And this is also related to the work you're doing, and you wanted us to at least mention that this is coming, or that you're doing this work. How does Black Alliance for Peace 1033 program abolish platform fit with what we've been talking about?
Mm-hmm. So Pan-African Community Action is a member organization of the Black Alliance for Peace. We've been so since the Black Alliance for Peace formed in 2017. So we're both member of Black Alliance for Peace and also a member of National Alliance Against Racist Political Repression. Black Alliance for Peace focused on militarization, ending the overarching campaign, no compromise, no retreat, end the war on Black people in the U.S. and abroad. The component of that, it has two components and two major components. One is shut down AFRICOM, U.S. out of Africa, shut down AFRICOM, the U.S. military command center on the African continent. And the other one is this, abolishing the 1033 program, which is the part of the U.S. National Defense and Authorization Act that authorizes military equipment to come from the Department of Defense and go to localized police. So when we see like Freddie, the protest uprisings in Ferguson and Baltimore, and then recently in the George Floyd uprisings, we're seeing militarized police, and they've been militarized for a while, but now it's getting more attention. So the Black Alliance for Peace call, in which PACA also supports and should be an integral part of anyone who's talking about defunding police, it should be, we should also be adding defund the military, definitely abolish the 1033 program. This particular, it says February 1st, 2021, but we actually had this campaign before. This is a statement referring to, because a lot of people were talking okay, let me roll back a little bit. Under Obama, he made some cosmetic changes to this 1033 program that made it a little bit more, there really wasn't anything that was to speak of, made it a little bit more difficult for the different departments to apply and get this equipment. But in spite of that, still they had a 2,400% increase in transfer of weapons from Department of Defense to different police forces, in spite of, even with his thing. Now, when Trump came into office, he undid some of the things that Obama did. Now Biden comes into office and undoes what Trump did, but still the 1033 program is intact. It's like they're responding to the moment of Black Lives Matter movement and wanting to claim to be doing something for racial justice, but really it's a little bait and switch crap that they're saying, just make so we're saying, no, that's not enough. It's a slap in the face. Abolish that if you're really concerned with it. And these campaigns for the Black Alliance for Peace are much like why there's so much synergy between PACA. It's not like we're expecting some benevolent, response from the state. But if our people are organizing some real, transformative demands that challenge the state and expose it for, its unresponsive to these things, that's what we're looking for. So in other words, you can't run for office or say you're down for us and not be down to abolish the 1033 program, not be down to get the U.S. military command out of Africa, our motherland, which really should be, that's really, to all the ADOS folks, some shade here. It's an insult to us. It's an insult to all African people, all people of African descent, to be able to police our motherland, our continent, in our face. It's like what Malcolm X said: "You're a chump, or you're a traitor to your race if you don't stand for that." So they're up there policing our motherland and our communities in the U.S., and we have to make that an integral part of our demands and our movement building.
But this goes back to the same thing you all were talking about earlier. I mean, that at the other end of that are threatening prepositions that, for instance, the black bourgeoisie will say, I don't want these poor Negroes climbing over my fence as soon as you get rid of the police. And I'm invested in this thing. The police are my friends. The police, so this connection you're drawing isn't easily. Same thing with the negative imaginations imposed on us of the continent. People are saying, well, not only is the U.S. military good, they're over there, supporting terrorists, and they're all, what's going on? Come on now, why?
What's Somalia going to do if the U.S. pulls out?
Right, exactly. They're going to come over here.
Is up there, right?
And one of them is already a member of the squad.
Right.
See?
But that's so there's a lot in what you just said. I want to give Max in on this one too, but in some instances it also reminds me of our experiences and like some of the legitimate concerns people have, like when you said climbing over the fence and all that. Now that's a class issue, but even when we're talking about our working class Black communities, and unbeknownst to maybe some of the
I didn't mean to mess up your flow. I'm just helping promote your next.
Yeah, sorry about that. that even when it came to us, when we first started, we used to go door to door doing talking about the Justice for Zoe campaign. Alonzo Smith, who was really the incident with Alonzo Smith that Max talked about, that started us. We used to go door knocking, talking about Alonzo, kind of do some investigation, but also propagating, or doing political educate, whatever, around community control of the police. And people's response was, this is the working class community. It's like, we need the police. We can't get rid of the police. We ain't even say get rid of the police. We said community control. And their response was visceral about automatically jumping to, we can't get rid of the police. Now, when we said that in some other forums, we've said, well, the people aren't really favorable to, and the working class folks feel like there's some need for something in our community. There's intercommunal violence and whatnot. Even though the police don't resolve that, they know that that's still an issue, right? And so the
police exacerbate that, if anything.
Right, exactly. But they still know that that's an issue, and so you can't just win people over by saying you're going to get rid of the police. You have to talk about some kind of replacement, some kind of control, whatever. And so there's a legitimate concern in that. Now, your point was more of a class, the mixed leadership class, and the people, black bourgeoisie or petty bourgeoisie, that really are invested in this system. That's a little bit a different thing, and they're definitely concerned.
But even across class lines is the negative imagery of the diaspora. That would encourage people to be thinking, the police may be jacked up over here, but I don't really want to get rid of them, and I certainly don't want to stop them from policing other people, right, who are worse than me, worse than us. So anyway, that's sort of what I was getting at. But
a lot of that is because we don't know our history, though. No, you made a good point. I mean, we don't know our history, and we don't know that what's happening in Africa in particular, even with Somalia and all that, is exacerbating, created a direct result of U.S. militarism and U.S. designs to destabilize the continent of Africa, make sure no legitimate people's movement or revolutionary state, socialist state emerges on that continent, right? They destroyed Libya, right? Decimated Libya in 2011, which is largely responsible for the emergence of groups like Al-Shabaab and all them. They raided the Libyan armory and proliferated. And so all of that, a lot of this stuff across the continent from the east to the west of Africa is largely responsible, that the U.S. is largely responsible for it, creating those conditions. And now saying, because those conditions exist, you need us to help you fight terrorism, right? And it's also proven, if we also not just history, it's also proven that the presence of the United States in the military presence in Africa aggravates the terrorist response, because there's no real channel of ideologically clear revolutionary, consciousness. Not none. I shouldn't say that. That's not dominant. So what you have is it's like what Deruba was talking about. When he was the Black Stone Rangers and those groups that they had to revolutionize, because without it, we just out here doing whatever. That's what Al-Shabaab is. Their mission is to, for the U.S. to be out, right? And so that's counterintuitive to think that you're going to stay there and then you're going to get rid of them. And then as they bomb people and people die, then it recruits. There's studies. AFRICOM itself did studies saying that they're able to recruit people in response to what's happening. And so it's stupid. So we need to, I don't want to get off track here, but the point is that the only road for us to be liberated on the continent of Africa, whether it be in continent of Africa, whether it be in Haiti or in the United States, is for us to be organized and to take self-determination as a principle, a paramount principle. And no, we're gonna get backlash, but that's the only thing.
When that started, you started something. You mentioned that backwards hashtag, and people already in the chat, going losing their, it's straight soda here, baby. Solidarity dispersed Africans, backwards never. But to well-dressed nerd, just very quickly, man, you could just go to Twitter and search my name right now, and you'll see all the nonsense your crew is saying. I don't even think people are I don't even think a lot of well-meaning ADOS supporters are actually paying attention to what their leadership or others are saying on their behalf. So I'm not even sure people are really clear on what their own crew's politics are. as they are out here defending them. So anyway, I don't want to take up too much time with that, but I just wanted to point that out. Please, your point about their position politically is correct. And those who are defending them on that are just not paying attention to their own leadership. Max, you want to get in with anything? Because I always, as we approach an hour, I always, do a time check, let folks know we're approaching an hour. I've exhausted my set of questions, but I want to make sure you get to whatever you want to, if anything we haven't covered that you want to get to, please do, or just respond or elaborate on.
I just want to respond to this point in particular about the relationship between the things going on in the continent and the things going on in the hood. And that is that the same people who are responsible for police brutality here are responsible for military abuses over there.
Right.
It's the same people. They're the same ones making the same decisions, reaching the same conclusions, and for the same reasons. They're doing it because they are exploiting us in exchange for profit. And that is important. So by weakening their grip on their military grip on the continent, it also helps weaken their police domination and their social and economic domination of us here. In addition to which, it's obviously clear that if we are able to build up a strong and liberated and unified Africa, that will be a point at which a place that could fight for us and our rights here. When something happens to a Chinese national in Europe or in the United States, China is able to stand up and say, you can't do that to them over here. When something happens to a U.S. citizen, the United States goes over there, gets them out of prison and make sure they don't face charges in other countries. Who does that for us here? Who does that for Black people in the United States? The only one who's going to be able to do that for us here is a free and unified Africa. And therefore,
could you imagine a United States of Africa saying, give those people reparations or community control of the police or whatever we want to say we want.
Can you imagine them saying that until terrorism against Black people in the United States stops, you will get no more materials that can be used to produce iPhones, which all come from the continent.
Right.
We will have economic sanctions against state-sponsored terrorism against Black people, against descendants of Africans everywhere.
No more rubber for your
And you would not be able to make another iPhone. You would not be able to make another Android phone until you've gone 24 months without murdering a Black person. Can you imagine that?
24
months.
God, man.
24 months. As a faith building measure. So 24 months. And then
they were struggling to go 24 hours.
That's right.
Yes. Hopefully that would not be where we stop. But the point is that if we had the resources and strength of the continent that was able to fight for us, then that would us, meaning Africans who are here in the Americas, then that will strengthen our position here. And that means we have to fight for a free and unified Africa. We cannot have a free and unified Africa so long as the United States is bombing there at whenever they want, assassinating presidents and political leaders whenever they want, and exploiting the natural resources and the people there in any way with impunity.
And then your point about the class is that we have to have class struggle on both ends, because you mentioned the bourgeoisie who say, we got the same thing on the African continent, these comprador class asking for the U.S. to come in and do all these things. And right now in Nigeria and Uganda, they're using these U.S. trained police too. And the Israel, settler colonial Israel, these settler colonists are in cahoots. They train in our people, training people to oppress us with police and militarization, both on the continent of Africa and here. The what's it called, the deadly exchange program, where Israeli police and U.S. police have exchanges on techniques. And if we know what they're doing to Palestinians, then that's just that's what that shows us where we are and what we're up against.
Everybody is looking at the world except us. We're encouraged not to look at the world for some reason. So you all asked me to share. I pulled up the wrong thing here. You all wanted me to share one other thing before we wrap up. But while I'm pulling this up, Netfa, go ahead. Ricky mentioned it. Where are you about to be at 2:00?
Oh yeah. So Baltimore is having it's a BAP chapter in Baltimore is having a forum on why does what does AFRICOM mean to us, people in the U.S. And so myself and Zoe, I don't have it right now. I don't know the person's name.
Well, whoever's going to be there with you will be there at 2 o'clock, right?
It's an interactive thing, and they put a lot of work into it. I'm giving a presentation, but they also have it. It's not just me talking and the other person talking. They're going to do it's interactive, little, multimedia, that kind of thing. It's 2 o'clock, and then I hope maybe Ricky can put, and Ricky's facilitating. Can you put in maybe the chat, there's a URL for it, and you have to register, and it's online, obviously. But yeah, we're gonna be just talking about the connections between, kind of like what we've been talking about now, the connections between AFRICOM and the U.S. and trying to build, a campaign around AFRICOM on the local level.
All right. Well, and then Max, why don't you tell us about this event that you all have coming up, where Brother Dhoruba will be again, and I don't know what happened to him. I think he just got too comfortable with his suit and his tea in his favorite booth over there, and was like, you know what? I think I'm good. I'll check back with them a little later. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
talk about
it's our Asada Shakur study group. Actually, NEPA has the details on that. On that event coming up. But we believe, as we talked about, there's some confusion among African people about what we should be doing and what we should be. So we think that the core function of our movement right now is to engage in leadership development and political education for the masses as a way of building up concepts of oh boy.
I just talked him up.
Ears were ringing.
I just talked him up, Dhoruba. We were just talking about you. I said you got too comfortable in your spot over there and didn't find us.
No. It ain't like that. Hey, that's NAFTA.
Got a mask on. Hey, brother.
Yeah, man. I wanted to big up Community Change Africa. That's why I put my mask on. This is our NGO in Ghana.
It's upside down, isn't it?
Man, it's the camera, man.
Oh,
it's the camera. I think it's the camera. Yeah, you might be right, bro. How's that?
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yep. So what's happening, peeps? What's going on?
We were just wrapping up a conversation about community control of the police and announcing the event you're going to be joining Rosa Clemente at with PACA. What was the date of that?
Wednesday. This Wednesday coming up 7 p.m. This is going to be late for
Yeah. That's the thing with NEPA, right? That's your thing, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so we're going to be unpacking, the what we about the film and what we really should be getting from this moment where there's attention on that, and just getting the perspective of Dhoruba and Rosa Clemente and we maybe I shouldn't. We invited Fred Hampton Jr., but he's, as you can imagine, he's getting all kind of requests, so he's bombarded. So we don't know if that'll happen.
Yeah, man, we low on the totem pole, man. So
I don't know what other requests he might have. There might be some legitimate ones that are.
I'm quite sure they are. I'm quite sure they are. Everybody got priorities, man.
Right.
So I'm quite sure they are. I mean, it took a lot. I think it took a lot for him to have to endure and go through this. Especially how close it was to the family, mm-hmm. and the spot there in Chicago is up for grabs and stuff, and
mm-hmm.
So, and as usual, the activists and the families and the people in the movement, they usually broke and they ain't got no money, and most of the comrades who are elderly now, they have no Social Security or anything, so. Yeah, he probably does have a plate full right now. I think that my concern with that would be that the way the media is coming at this, and we know that the timing of the release of this movie was strategic, was tactical, not just for marketing purposes, but because of where America is at in terms of white supremacy and black folks. The timing wasn't coincidental, and I could tell by the emotional response of black folks that watched the movie, young people. That it did exactly what it was supposed to do. It it overlooked the historical movement and the actual existential conditions that we were in there. I mean, it could never recapture that. I think I was reading something where a brother, Isaiah Ishmael, on Facebook, he was bemoaning the fact that the movie didn't have a soundtrack, music that came out then. You know, that in 1969 you don't have a soundtrack with the Shy Lights and come on, man, serious? You don't have a soundtrack, Curtis Mayfield?
The official soundtrack. I don't know if he was talking about the score of the film, but the official soundtrack that's come out subsequent or separate from the film is some garbage. It contains none of that, and none of the historical, none of the timepieces, and none of the politically relevant contemporary pieces.
No Ku Klux Klan, Wise Intelligent, and nothing.
Oh hell no! In fact, Jay-Z is on there talking about since he was born on the day Fred Hampton was killed, that he is both Hampton and Jeff Fort. He's even more of a threat. So I mean,
he got more. He got more money to be a threat, but we know what's happening with that. I mean, you know, our black capitalist elite who have derived their fame and fortune from pimping black culture and black subculture and black desperation. You know, they have money and they do have a stage and they do have entree to media that ordinary people and people in the movement don't have. Having said that, we need to understand what side of the barricades they're on, who they are, and if we understand how black capitalism has evolved from poverty pimping after the war on poverty to now, and we could clearly understand how why Jay-Z would say something as asinine as that. Jay-Z is not a stupid person. He's a smart individual. He knows what he's saying, and so I would take it to mean that he has identified himself as our enemy, and he intends to rebrand the very notion of a Fred Hampton and a Black Panther Party. So.
Unfortunately, I can't hold Max and Net for all day.
No. Go ahead. This is their program, man. I just wanted to. Go ahead.
But I wanted to give either. I thought obviously you all could do what you want, but I thought maybe you could give just a taste of what you would have to say or what you're going to talk about with them on Wednesday in terms of community control of the police, that particular issue.
We talked about that. Me and him talked about that for about 45 minutes, didn't we? Yeah. I mean, I think that but knows what I'm going to say.
Then,
all politics is local, man.
Right.
All politics is local, bro. And we know how the Republican Party and the right wing, since the end of the civil rights era, have been entrenching their power in states, redlining and creating voter restrictions and hoops so that black people cannot exercise the power over their local environment. And I think that that's our fight right now. And I think that the community control of police, decentralization of police is key to that. Because this is a garrison state. This has evolved into a serious garrison state where the United States has based all of its unity, all of its national politics on fear. Fear of others, fear of immigrants, fear of Iran, fear of Muslims, fear of terrorists. So this is a garrison state where the military and the police are special agents and constantly lauded and cheered. I mean, every movie we see is a police or military movie.
Right.
So we need to understand that community control of police is crucial.
Right. And I was just something Taruba just said made me think about also every moment that they can get us kind of distracted with and make it seem of our own. For example, that thing that happened on the Capitol, they're using that to show up the national security state in terms of surveillance, in terms of our access to social media. Big tech and big media are coming together, and some people are cheering that on because they think, oh yeah, Trump needs to be railed in. They don't understand the implications of that, in terms of us. So it's like this battle of ideas too is an important front that they're trying to engage in, and they know they don't really have the upper hand with the truth and with just things, so they have to resort to confusion and containment.
Hey Max, you got any last comments or thoughts before we unfortunately have to dip?
I think we right now, as people who are concerned about our liberation, we need to be thinking about the acquisition of power, not the ability to exert influence on those who have power, but on the ability to make decisions on our own, and then to implement those decisions, and then to protect the implementation of those decisions. We should be thinking about, talking about, and fighting for power, not for influence.
Hey, Netfa, Max, Daruba, and everybody, I want to just thank you all.
Thank you, brother.
It's been great. It's been a great morning and day for me. Daruba, thank you for making that ride out there to get on with us today. And I look forward to seeing you on Wednesday with the PACA conversation.
Yep. Yeah, I look forward to that too. And y'all be strong, man. I mean, we're in a very precarious moment, but the enemy gets desperate in their last throws. And seriously, man, the way these fascists have, the right wing has thrown them a curve. And so we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, well, good people, I greatly appreciate you, man. And anytime we can help out, please let us know over here at Black Power Media, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you all very much. Daruba, peace.
All right, Jack,
man.
thank you, man.
Yes, indeed. Max, Netflix,
Okay.
Take care now. All right.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thanks again for joining me this morning and early afternoon. Please come back at 8:00 Eastern time for our roundtable discussion with a whole bunch of contributors to a live reinvention, correcting Manning Marable's Malcolm X on this yet another anniversary of Malcolm's assassination. 8:00 Eastern. And in meantime, between time, like Fred Hampton used to say to you, we say peace if you're willing to fight for it. And we'll catch you in that whirlwind, like Garvey said, and like Daruba and them were in as well. So a big thanks to everybody once again. And please like, share, subscribe, join, all of that good stuff. And we'll catch you back here 8:00 Eastern time today for much more. Peace, everybody. I mix what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I